Again, YouTube. Today we'll be making this in the hoop zippered pouch. It is going to be made in the 5x7 hoop. It is completely lined with no raw edges inside and is very quick to make. The princess bag is made the exact same way. When you download the file, you will get step-by-step instructions complete with pictures, a complete cutting list, and any other supplies that you will need. This is all of your fabric. It's been cut out following your cutting list. This is warm and natural batting. It's what I like to use and it's what I have on hand. You can also use the Pelon batting or fleece or flannel or no batting at all, depending on what you're kind of going for. This is my outside fabric I've decided to use, and it is printed duck cloth. It's probably one of my favorite things. It's I feel like it's really durable. You can use whatever fabric you want to. Remember, the thicker your fabric is, the harder your bag's going to be to turn, and the thinner your fabric, it's going to be easier to turn. This is going to be my lining fabric, and that's going to be my applique fabric. You're also going to need some thread and some scissors. This is the zipper, and see, it's got the little plastic teeth on it. If they come out of the package really wrinkled, remember you can iron on the tape and you can lightly iron on the back, but don't iron the teeth themselves because you can melt them. Also, no metal teeth. Your machine does not like metal. And also, no zippers with the big plastic chunky teeth. The machine cannot sew through that. Alright, so you are going to take your 6x13 piece and your 6x5 piece. You are going to fold them in half, so you're going to put your two 6-inch pieces together, two 6-inch sides together, and iron a crease in them. What you're again going to do is open them back up. This is your 6x7 piece of batting. It's going to go right in there. I fold that down, and then you're going to do the same thing for your 6x7 piece, and this is your 6x3 batting. And that's basically how your bag's gonna look. Your zipper will be in the middle. This thread is gonna top stitch. If you look at our original bag here, you can see where the top stitching is. I prefer to have it contrast. That's my personal style. If you don't, then you're gonna want something that's gonna match your fabric. This is my hoop. For this in the hoop project, we're going to be sewing directly onto your stabilizer. Now this is heavy tearaway stabilizer. Please, please, please don't use that fuse and tear. It's not going to end well. But to start off, I just have my stabilizer hooped, and we are going to go to the machine. Alright, we are now over at the machine. I have my hoop and stabilizer in the machine and my file loaded. The first stitch it is going to stitch out is basically a placement stitch to show you where everything's going to go. This is our placement stitch the machine just did. Our first thing we're going to do is put the zipper in. The zipper needs to be at least 7 inches long. It can be longer. Mine was really long, so I cut off the extra, but it has to be at least 7 inches long. Your teeth are going to be facing up and your pull is going to be over here towards the left. Now you're going to put this in place and the machine's going to stitch it down. You can either hold it in place with tape or straight pins. I prefer the tape. It needs to be some kind of low tack tape. It can't be some really sticky kind of tape because you're going to have to remove this tape and you don't want it tearing your stabilizer. So tape both ends into place. If the machine happens to stitch over the blue tape, it's no big deal. You can just pull it off. We're going to go back to the machine and it's going to stitch 2 stitches to hold our zipper into place. So we are back over at the machine and it is going to lay down a stitch on either side of the zipper. So our machine has stitched 2 stitches on either side of our zipper. We are going to remove our tape. We are going to take this is our 6x7 piece that we folded in half with our batting in between. We are going to place the fold side covering that seam it just did. It's going to stitch right along that seam again. Now you can place this, you have extra fabric, so you can place it as much over the zipper or far away as you want to. I don't like it over the zipper, so I put it fairly close. It is going to stitch a top stitch right along this. You're going to need to use your tape again just to kind of hold it in place, just to make sure it doesn't move anywhere. You can also use straight pens. If you do straight pen, make sure that your pen gets back up so you're not going to scratch your machine. Now we're going to go back to the machine and stitch that into place. I am back over at the machine, and the machine is going to put a top stitch along that zipper. Alright, so our machine put down this top stitch to hold it into place. We can remove our tape. Now, if something happened or something shifted and it's not, you don't like the color, or it's not as straight as you want to be, or you want it to be closer to the zipper, do not despair. You do not have to start all over. What you can do is flip it over to the back and take a handy dandy seam ripper and rip out this seam right here, and you can redo that step again. So do not despair. We're going to do the same thing with our 6x7, or this is 6x13 with our 6x7 piece of batting in. We're going to put it over that seam that is stitched out, and we're going to do this all over again. We're going to put some tape to hold it into place, and go back to the machine and stitch out the seam right here. We are now back over at the machine, and the machine is going to stitch out our top stitch. Our machine has finished its top stitching. It is now in place to do the placement stitch for the anchor. I have another video on appliquing, so if you have any questions on that, you can watch that one. We'll go through this pretty quick to make sure we don't beleaguer the point. So it is going to stitch out our placement stitch for our anchor. I have put some spray-based stain spray on the back of our applique fabric, and the machine is now going to do the zigzag placement stitch. Alright, so it has made its zigzag stitch. It's going to zigzag around here twice to make sure it's really held on there, and you can also make sure if you nick a couple it's not going to come off. So I'm going to take my applique scissors and I'm going to trim around all of this. We are now back over at the embroidery machine, and the machine is now going to stitch out the satin stitch all the way around. Alright, our machine has done all of its satin stitching, so our applique is now done for our anchor. It is now going to stitch a stitch all the way around just to help hold everything into place. Alright, so we've removed it from the machine. It's made another stitch all the way around. Now we've come to the point where if you want to put a strap on your bag, you can. It surely depends on what you are doing with your little bag. This is up to you. I put a little strap on this one. I didn't at all in the princess bag. It's all up to you. Now the easiest way to make a strap is with some ribbon. What you're going to do is you're going to place it along the side of your bag wherever you want it, and you need to make sure that the loop part, this little loop part, is inside your bag between the top of the bag and your zipper, and make sure that it's not going to go over here because your machine's going to stitch again. So make sure it's in there and your hoop is inside. You can also make a strap if you want to, or a handle. You can put multiple pieces in there. You can make it as long as you want to, but just keep in mind that your machine is going to stitch along this stitch again. Now you can also make it out of fabric. This is just a regular square of fabric, and what I did is I ironed it. So half and half, and I folded and ironed it again. And you can top stitch along this to make a more elaborate fabric strap and make it match your bag. You can also, this is another bag I have made, where I folded it and top stitched it all. You can see the pink top stitching. I've also added hardware to this bag. So you can make this as complicated or as elaborate or not at all, depending on how you want it. All right, so what I'm gonna do next is open my zipper. I'm gonna open it more than halfway. Now your machine's gonna wanna pull back to center, so that's why you want it more than halfway. You don't want it so far over here because your machine's gonna stitch and you don't want this kind of throwing it off. I'm gonna tape my handle, whatever I have decided, and I'm gonna put it in place, and I am going to tape it into place. Now remember your machine is gonna stitch again along this line, so make sure your strap is where you want it to be relative to where your bag is gonna be. All right, so what you're going to do now is take your outside fabric and we're gonna flip it over to the wrong sides facing. You're gonna put your right sides together. Now that stitch that the machine just stitched out, you need to make sure it's entirely covered. If not, you will have a hole in your bag. You're now gonna take your batting and place it on top of that. You are now gonna take some straight pins and straight pin all of this together. So flip it over to the back. You can feel where these stitches are. So what you're going to do is you are going to pin through all of this, making sure that your straight pin comes back up, or else it'll scratch up your machine. You can flip it and make sure that your straight pin is not too close to where your machine is going to be stitching. So do that in a couple places, and then we will go back to the machine. We are back over the machine. The machine's going to sew a rectangle around your bag and sew through your zipper. Do not worry, it'll be okay. So, here we go. So we are out of the machine. When it's sewing the batting, you can also run your hand out in front of where your machine is stitching to help hold it in place if you want to, or stop the machine if it starts to kind of shift somewhere you don't want it to. When it's sewing the batting, you do need to pay attention to it. You can't just walk away from it. So you're going to take your pins out. Now we're going to flip over to the back of our bag. You're going to take, this is your lining fabric, and you are going to place it over on the back of your frame. So we're going to flip back over now, and now we are going to pin through all your bag and your lining fabric on the back. And make sure once again that it's not too close to anything, and make sure it's flat. Alright, so I fixed it and made sure this is how it needs to look, so it's flat. And you're going to pin in a couple other places. You can use your front as a guide to make sure you're not pinning, and also make sure your pins are on the top. Your machine's not going to want to ride on any of that. So pin away. Alright, I have it pinned. I'm also going to use some tape, because sometimes what can happen is this, when you load it into your machine, can fold backwards and then it doesn't get sewn right. So use some tape on the corners just to make sure that nothing really moves. Alright, so I have my machine all loaded again with my hoop, and my fabric is taped to the bottom and pinned to the bottom. Make sure that when you load this in that your lining hasn't gotten caught up on anything. Your machine is going to sew all the way around, leaving a hole so you can flip your bag. Alright, so I'm back over at my table now. You are going to take your bag out of your hoop now and remove any tape you have. You remove your tape too. Alright, so, and this is the opening it left that we're going to flip our bag through. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your scissors, these need to be some heavy duty scissors, and you're going to cut along the bag. Now, right here where our opening is, you're going to want to leave some extra because we're going to have to fold it under. So I've cut all the way around our bag. Make sure you don't cut any of the stitches or else you will have a hole in your bag. Also leave a little opening like this so that eventually in the end we can fold this under because we're going to have to sew it. The easiest way to turn this that I found is take a corner opposite your opening and pull it through first. And you're going to pull your bag out through your opening and flip it. I'll tell you right now, no, this isn't the easiest thing to do, but just keep at it. So I got our bag right side or inside out, so it's turned. You're now going to take and tear away all of your tearaway stabilizer. Now remember, we stitched on this to begin with, so some of your stitches, some of your thread will come out because we stitched on it as a guide. So don't panic if some stitches come out and you're thinking your bag's gonna fall apart. So what you're gonna do is now take and remove all of the stabilizer. You're gonna tear it away from inside your bag. All of our stabilizer has been removed from, this is gonna be the inside of our bag. We have this opening that we need to close up. So technically you're supposed to hand sew it, but I think hand sewing is a form of torture, so I cheat. This is peel and stitch fabric fuse. It takes some getting used to. It is very, very sticky and it's not something to play with. But what I do is I'm going to cut a piece to go right there. It kind of works on the same premise as peel and stick tape. So you're going to stick it right here. And now fold everything into our bag. Okay. So see, this is how it's going to go. Now take off this piece take off the top piece, because once you stick it, it is pretty much done and you're not going to get a lot of room to move it. You can also use any form of fusible webbing, whatever, and of course it won't come off. Alright, nothing performs on tape like it's supposed to. Alright, so now see, it's clear. I haven't pulled it all the way back, so now I'm going to pull and then squish them together. Okay, and there you go. You can also hand stitch them together. You can also use some fusible with the iron. You can use any number of things you want to use. You just need to make sure it's closed up. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your bag and you're going to flip it. You're going to flip it out through your zipper to get it right side out. And there is our little bag. That's our leftover tape from our strap we put in there. And we can zip it on up. And that is your bag. Thank you for following along with our tutorial on how to make our little bag. If you like, please like and subscribe. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them at the bottom. Thank you.